Hey, Trailblazers, it's Leah Ray. And in this episode, we're talking about how to recruit top talent that build your business faster. So stick around. If you want to build a legitimate, profitable online business without shiny objects, without the hypey gimmicks, and without the stress and overwhelm, if you want to make more money without having to be present online all day, every day, pumping out content that nobody sees and hustling DMs to generate leads and sales, then this is the place for you. Welcome to the Digital Trailblazer Podcast, your online business university, where you'll learn how ordinary people start from ground zero with no influence, no email list or audience to sell to, and no business or marketing experience, and go from working 9-to-5 jobs to building successful 6- and 7-figure online businesses and all the steps in between. Learn the strategies that worked and what didn't. Learn the mistakes that they made and how to avoid them, and then learn their plans for scaling their businesses and taking things to the next level. All so that you can build your business faster and easier and make more money without sacrificing the things that are important to you in your life. I'm your host, Leah Ray Getz, and with me is my husband, Todd. Now, let's get to it with today's guest. Welcome, Daniel. We're super excited to have you with us on the show today and to dive deep into this topic. Give a little introduction for the audience. Let them know a little bit more about what you do and where all this came from.
Well, my name is Daniel Brimblecombe. I run Brimble Recruitment Group, which we originally set up to assist businesses to help them to get virtual assistants in. I've been hiring virtual assistants across the world for over 10 years. I do run a couple of different businesses because I also run a marketing company as well. But we've sort of adapted things over the years with the support of the virtual assistant backend. The media business has sort of emerged more into helping clients to get booked onto podcasts and using my own virtual assistant team to help them get booked on podcast stages and media around the world. So I've sort of moved away from a lot of the traditional marketing that I've done over the years because I've done marketing for basically every type of business, from bricks and mortar businesses, both on and offline businesses. I've also done 3 political campaigns, and I've done marketing for big events and also celebrities and so on. But then I've moved away and I've moved more into working with the virtual assistant end, and for the purpose of both myself and for my clients to free up a lot more of their time and to leverage and to scale their businesses. And through virtual assistants, that's really the easiest way of delegating and creating that freedom for yourself. Because, of course, the key thing to mention when we first start talking about this is that the reason we got into business wasn't just to keep working in our own business. We built it for leverage to create the life so that we wanted.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people start their businesses as a solopreneur. And I know that when we started, we kind of had this idea that, especially as an online business, we would be able to build a business that basically ran itself. And at some point we'd be just sitting on the beach and making money. And then eventually you grow big enough and you realize that there are just some things that you can't automate, or that if you did automate, it would be detrimental to your business. And so you need an actual living person managing something. And the thought of having to bring on a team and manage people and do that whole thing it's a whole new skill set in and of itself. And I know that when we were thinking about this for the first time, the idea of getting a virtual assistant that we could manage remotely, as hands-off as possible, that was a very attractive idea to us. But at the same time, when we hired our first people, that came with challenges as well. And I know that we were not the best managers when we brought on our first handful of employees. So for people who are looking to make that first hire, or maybe even that next hire, and they haven't had a successful VA come in yet, what are some of the things that you need to take into account when you're thinking about hiring that first person and you want to outsource that and hire a VA? What are some of the important things you need to keep in mind to make sure that that's going to be successful for you?
Well, I think to address that first, just about every client that comes to me has had a horror story already about how they attempted to hire someone and it went completely bad. We all have horror stories. Even I've got horror stories. And that's what got me to the stage where knowing how to hire the right person. What we've done recently, recently, a bit over a year now, we've been doing it, is that because originally you put out the call to hire someone and you get 100 applications. You know, if you put something in a group now, I'm looking to hire a virtual assistant, you just get slammed with 100 applications, and that's the overwhelming part. And a lot of the time, the business owners, they're not basing their decision completely. At first, they go with the money end of things. They're looking for the cheapest option. And we know that the cheapest option is very rarely the best option, because the person that wants to take anything to work, they're not as committed in that. Before that, backstepping before you actually considering hiring somebody in, you've got to decide what they're actually going to do. The thing that I've been suggesting in recent times is that you look at your month and you work out, and maybe you go for a week or two, depending on how consistent with the things that you do each day is, or each week. And you're actually taking note of everything that you're doing. And then you're deciding that this task is very repetitive. So I'm going to take that off my list. I'm going to create the procedure out, and I can hand that off to someone else. And that's the first step. Because I think the thing to remember before you hire a virtual assistant is a virtual assistant, a lot of the time, unfortunately, clients come in and they think they're going to get me just in a virtual assistant form. And they think they're going to get somebody that's really highly experienced, that knows more than them. And I think that's also part of a big mistake with business owners. They think that they're hiring a virtual assistant. You're not hiring a consultant. You're hiring somebody to take tasks off your list, to do the things that you would normally do so you can do a higher value work. That's really something that's really key to think about before you do any of those hirings, is because you're definitely not hiring a consultant. So take those tasks, turn them into standard operating procedures, because I always like the saying, I can't remember who said it, but until you have systems and processes, you have a hobby, you don't have a business. So when you're starting to hire people, you actually have to have a business. So you need systems and processes in there. They don't have to be perfect as well. They don't have to be the best. You'll get that right hire. Everyone wants an A player, but you don't always get an A player straight at the gate. Sometimes people say all the right things. They do all the right things in the interview process, but then they get to the other side and they're not amazing. But that's fine. That's part of the game. But essentially, you can always refine on that systems and process, because a lot of the time people will also get stuck in that phase where they'll go, but maybe it could be done this way, it could be done that way, maybe it could be done quicker. And also you have to accept that your new person is probably going to do it a lot slower than you are. And also possibly 70% of how good you've done the work is. So I think those are the key things. You do have to consider your budget. You don't make that the complete deciding factor, because if somebody's really, really good and you're prepared to pay a little bit more, go with that person. That's a bit better if they really appeal. And also think about some incentive, because I always say that everyone on my team generates me income, and I pay them also additionally according to that. And I think about that beforehand. I don't look at them as an expense. I look at them as an investment. So that's what's something else. Systems and processes is the next one. And then your hiring process from there, I think you've always got to have a questionnaire and a segment of things to help them to align with you and your personality, and make them questions that they can't just rattle off. And also, when you shortlist, if you're hiring yourself and you're not going for an agency, because of course we do this all for you on our end, you want to have a couple of tasks that shortlist can do, but don't make it any more than like a 20-minute type work, because I don't like to take advantage of people that are applying for the job, of course. I like to make it very realistic. And also, I always find that when I hire people, of course, I've had to let people go and so on, but normally we're pretty good with getting the right people these days, just because we've gone through that process. And then always have that trial time in there. Setting clear expectations is also a really good thing as well. So you've already got your systems and processes, and then you're setting a clear expectation, because you want them to win and you want them to see that there's actually an outcome that you're looking for. And that's something good to do through that before you hire.
Yeah, I think you brought up some really important points there, specifically around having a working system in place before you hire somebody to take that over. Because I think kind of a big mistake a lot of people make is they have an idea of bringing someone on in order to fix a problem that they can't solve. And they're looking more to outsource their problems rather than to have somebody manage something that's already working. So for example, like lead generation, prospecting, calling leads, whatever it is. And I know there's a lot of services out there that are advertising this, that, hey, hire one of our VAs to message people on Facebook for you, and it's only $1,000 a month or whatever, it's some super low amount, and 80 book calls on your calendar guaranteed, and blah, blah, blah. And you do this when you haven't done it yet yourself. You don't have a process in place. And so people come in, for one, it can really mess up your Facebook account. It can really mess up your business account. down. If you're running paid ads, it can get your paid ads account shut down. Like there's some dangerous things that they're doing. And then you don't really end up with what you wanted at the end. Like you may have gotten the calls, but not a single one showed up, or they were unqualified, or they were the wrong people. And so there's all sorts of stories like this out there of people just hiring VAs in order to solve a problem that they haven't solved yet. And so I think it's really important that you have a process that's working. And like you said, because they're not going to do it as well as you, they're not going to do it as fast as you, at least not at first. So you need to have something in place that's really working well that they can come in and take over. And then the second thing you mentioned that I think is really important is that your VAs all make you money. So for example, I can think of a lot of people who are doing things on social media. They're posting, they're putting things out on Instagram and on TikTok and on Facebook and all that stuff. But their posts aren't really generating revenue in their business. And then they hire a social media manager or a VA to do their posting for them. And it's just an expense in their business because it doesn't generate revenue. Now, that may free you up to do other things that generate revenue. But if that's something that's not generating revenue in your business, then hiring your VA to take it over is not going to suddenly make it profitable for you.
Yeah, that's it. Well, a lot of people they're hiring a VA and expecting a consultant. That's always the thing where that's why we're looking for those systems and processes that are already working for you. Because if you know, because a lot of time we do a lot of social media strategies. I always set the standard. And before I let my VAs, because my VAs are quite creative and they learn from me, because I've got over 20 years experience doing marketing. And I know if I let them coordinate the strategy, they're not going to get the same result as me. So I set the standard for the strategy, then I give it to them. And I also don't exchange. I don't expect them to get the same result as me. And if I want to get a better result in a certain area, I hire the consultant and I get them to give me the actual strategy of going in that direction. Or I get the course and I'll do the course and then I'll filter the course out and then I'll give the strategy to the VA. And I'll train them how I want to do it, or I'll implement it first. Those lead generation ones, I get those all the time. I think we all get flooded on those now. And I respond to them. I said, if you're doing, because we do outreach, we do over 1,000 outreaches a day for clients and for us as well. And I always respond to them. I said, what do you actually do? What's the scripting and all that? And then they just repeat what they said before. And I said, well, if you outreach like this, I don't want to deal with you ever, because of course, I like to, being in the business, I like to see what they're doing. It's like the saying is, good artists create, but great artists steal. So you're always going to be looking for those additional methods. When we had our pre-chat, I was telling you how I liked part of your system of the pre-interviewing and so on, and so your emails and so on. And I told you that I'm stealing emails from you. So, but we all do that essentially. But really, yeah, I think going back to the question is that you've got to be looking for that VA, because I've had clients come on before, and I've refined up on this, where they come on, they're expecting the VA to take all those things over for them, and it's unrealistic expectations. You're going to go from, that yourself you're worth $500, $1,000, or $1,500 an hour, whatever rate that you believe that you're worth, and then you're expecting it $500 an hour to be done by $2, $5, or $10 an hour. You definitely have to prove the concept as well, because I had a client that came on, and originally it was only lead generation. Of course, it was outreach, and I wrote all the emails for them, and I went above and beyond. But then it flipped around, and it turned out that he didn't want to get onto sales calls because he feels uncomfortable getting on sales calls, and he's not really closing any business. And he expected in the first week that he could turn his whole business around just by flipping it around, by getting the VA to close the deals and so on. And at the same time, we do virtual assistant interns. I've got another business, which I did mention because I don't mention to everyone. I only mentioned it because we got a training academy called Brimblecombe Certified. And we actually put our VAs through training and get them certified in the initial crash course. But of course, they come out of the crash course and they still need guidance from me, and they still need guidance from the client, because they're supposed to be taking over a system and a process, not immediately stepping straight out of training into something that's into building a business where he's paying them a minimum rate and that he's making the big chunk at the end.
Yeah, I see that all the time. They're out trying to outsource the problem, and versus building a team strategically where you've got a successful business, it's working, and now you're handing off what makes sense to delegate to somebody else. So here's a big one, right? How do you manage them ongoing? What kind of structure should you put in place for communication, for metrics, KPIs, like all the sorts of things that you probably need to be doing as a business owner?
It is a big one, but you've got to look at where you're at as well in regards to that and what's tasks that they're doing. I always say if I can't trust someone, they don't work for me anymore. That's something that's very big. I've let people go based off the trust end of things. I like to do everything through WhatsApp. So I set up WhatsApp chats with everything, and I've got multiple WhatsApp chats for different purposes. So that's the first communication end. I like to keep it very simple. Some people like to do the Slack channels and so on. We use Slack, we use Trello, depending on the client, but it can be overkill for a lot of things. You've got to determine what the tasks are before you determine what the tools are going to be. Some clients go, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this, and they got 10 different tools for doing the work. But if you keep it nice and simple to start with, and then you advance on it, you decide what that additional layer looks like. So I like to start with a WhatsApp chat. So that's number one. Number two, my core management VAs, because I've got a team of 4 that look after everything else. They report to me every 2 hours of their working day. Whatever hours that they're working, we just set up some standard forms. They fill out what they're doing in those 2 hours, and then they send me a screenshot into the WhatsApp chat. So in real time, I can look, but at the same time, I don't like to micromanage. I think that's always the key there, and micromanaging always messes you up. I saw a thing the other day where a quote guy was talking about Elon Musk. He said, if Elon Musk starts micromanaging you, you're on the way out the door. And I think that's something that's really key for a lot of business owners. And that's at the same time, you've got to accept that the work isn't going to be at your standard, and it may improve, and you're always giving good feedback. And I think that's something that's also key, where we've had clients before, they take on their first virtual assistant. You've got to do that key performance, but you've got to have realistic expectations. And you've got to have an expectation of somebody doing good and then improving on that doing good. But if you have the expectation that your key performance indication that they do it as good the first time as they will in a month or 2 months' time, then you're way off track. I think the big thing around that is first you keep that simple. And we have spreadsheets as well, because I've got outreach VAs as well. And then we've got database building VAs, because every day we're getting more and more data. Data fuels a lot of my business, especially for our outreaches and our bookings and everything like that. But it's all just deciding on what those targets are. Sometimes because you haven't had a start, but that's where the pre-part comes in, that you've identified what you've done all the way to this point. So you know what capacity that you can get to, and know that you can hit this many numbers based on your output. And sometimes working by the hour for clients, I know that there's some key performance indicators that don't hit the first month, because if we're doing by the hour, sometimes things stuff up in the first month. If that client wants X amount of social media outputs, because we edit like reels and so on, it doesn't hit the first month, but then the next month it does hit, or it exceeds. There's a lot of things in there. I'm sure we could go on and on about this one topic, because it is a big one. It is really a big one. But I think the key thing is, for the key takeaway is to keep it simple first, and to not go out and get the most wow amazing piece of software out there that has all these different pages, all these different tabs and everything else that opens. But just to keep it, if you went from just having a WhatsApp chat or whatever chat messages that you want to use, I would recommend WhatsApp, just because everything, if you're sending images and things like that, they still stay high res, because a lot of people are trying to do it on Facebook, and I think Facebook is very messy for that kind of thing, and things get lost. Sometimes I don't get notifications for messages, but WhatsApp's nice and clean. You can open up the groups. If you're working with a client and your VA needs to be updated on that, they can be with the client on the WhatsApp group as well. So keep it nice and clean, WhatsApp, and just do a Google spreadsheet. Yeah, nice and clean and simple.
Now, as far as finding the right VA, we were talking before this episode started about going to different countries for different types of skills and things like that. But also, where do you even find them in the first place? Where do you connect with them? I mean, you can go to Facebook groups, and there's plenty of Facebook groups where you can put a call out, say, I'm looking for a VA. You could maybe go to Fiverr, or maybe there's some other websites. You can go to an agency. What are all your different options out there? And what are they good for?
Well, of course, if you've got a one-off task, websites like Fiverr and so on are actually really good. And occasionally, I'll actually do that if I've got a one-off task to do. Not so much these days because I've got a full back-end team. But in the earlier days, if I had a one-off task, I'll just go get it done on Fiverr. Sometimes you get something pretty wacky done on there by someone that has a unique skill. So there's no problem with using that if you just got that one-off task, one-off budget. In order to find, you've got to determine what you actually do want, what the actual task is, and then you're going to want a bit of a system if you're sourcing. If you're sourcing somebody to work with you all the time, one-on-one, and so on. And if you've got the budget to have it, I'd recommend coming to me so I can source you a VA because we'll do a lot of this filtering for you. If you're time poor, business rich, then you need somebody else just to do that sourcing for you. You don't have the time. You want to shortlist down on that because we'll take them through, we'll certify them first, and we'll make sure that they can do the skill that you want them to do. I like the Facebook groups, but I also filter them heavily the way that I'm doing it now. But if I was everyone else, because normally these days we filter them because they go and they pay like the equivalent of less than $20 to do our crash course. And that's our first filtration process for us, because that was what we implemented later on, just because when you got 100 applications come through. But I'd have a process, and something that I like to do that everyone else could do, and you could do it from your email inbox, just set up another email and set up a Google form and let people file it in. But you got to make sure that you send it from a legitimate profile so people don't think that you're a scam. And if they do that Google form, at least then you've got them all on a list and you can just have a skim through, or you can put it into ChatGPT if you wanted to, and just let ChatGPT match the people that you want, and they could shortlist it that way. And then send out a shortlist and send them out a test. You might have to get on a call with maybe 10 to 20 of them just to shortlist it some more, because you don't really gauge somebody until you get on the call with them based off that. So that's probably would be the best way to put it out in as many places as you want. But it's always first deciding what type of person that you want and what skills you want them to have. Because if you want them to have slightly web development skills, then there's all these web development businesses. Something that's really good with going through us is that we can actually give you somebody that's more exclusive to your business, in a sense that you know that they're not going to go anywhere, and you can have them for less time. Like we can give you someone for 10 hours a week, and then we'll load them up with 3 other clients. A big issue is that if you get someone and you just hire them out of the blue and you're not paying them enough and you're not giving them enough hours, then they might work for 3 clients at the same time. And then you're waiting for that work, and they can keep that going for a while. They're not delivering for you. But for us, we're making sure that they're exclusive to us by giving them more hours elsewhere. But essentially, yeah, you got to go to where, because you can do it on Facebook. I wouldn't suggest going to try to source a VA if you were looking for a VA overseas through LinkedIn. If you're looking for a local VA, I know that the US has home VAs as well. And if you're looking for somebody to do phone calls for you, it's very well worthwhile looking for those kind of virtual assistants that are working from the US. Or from over here, if we've got some Australian listeners, there are Australian VAs as well. And if you're looking for people to do phone calls or even show up to your events and actually be and help you in person on those odd occasions, that it's well worthwhile, and that it's an investment at the same time. Because if you're looking at getting them on the call and so on, you're looking to get a higher ticket return on your investment. And as we were talking about before the call, you're looking for those key. Each country has different sections of specialty. I always think of it that way. If you're looking for somebody to do a front and customer service end of the work, I also know there's another country that I was exploring, but I didn't mention before, but I haven't hired anyone there before. I've hired through the Philippines, through Israel, for India. We've had one in Egypt. We have quite a few coming through South Africa at the moment for our courses that apply for work. But if you're looking for front end, you want that close to USA English or Australian English, which is really the Philippines. And the Filipinos are very hard workers, most of them. We can't say that as a generalization. Sometimes you do get a dud when you're looking for a superstar. And sometimes you don't know that until you put them to work. But that's where in the first week, setting those clear expectations is the way. But the Philippines is great for social media, great for customer service. Sometimes you think you're emailing with me, but you're actually emailing with my VA. So that's how close to that. And with AI as well, they can get very close to your personality through their emails. But that's you've got other people that will tell you about that with artificial intelligence. But if you're looking for really heavy back-end web development, like at the moment, we're developing a custom CRM for our outreach, and we're getting most of that will be done in India, because they'll do a lot more heavy of a back end of the web development. Because a lot of the training is a lot better around technology and IT and everything over in India. Their English doesn't tend to be as good as our English or the Philippines English. And there's always they use certain words that they think are polite, like kindly and dear and so on, and they don't come across right unless you're really heavily training. If you find that right person, of course, you can adapt them to be anything if they're prepared to learn. But so often I always find that the best work on the front end, and the best work if you're looking to design, is always done in the Philippines. And I know that I've got a friend that's having really good results with hiring out of South Africa as well. And South African English is really close, but the price is a little bit of an increase because of the cost of living. You do have to look at your budget, but it shouldn't be the main deciding factor of hiring the right person.
Well, I think this hopefully has been really enlightening for folks. As Digital Trailblazer, we have an international team of virtual contractors and VAs that we work with us. And I think this is gold, ladies and gentlemen. When you get to the stage in your business where you're ready for help, all of this is really what gets you to that next level. Like this, yes, you got to kind of grind it out yourself at the beginning. This is how you go from that, striving, struggling solopreneur. Okay, now you got a rhythm. Now it's start building out the team and create more ease and flow with everything you're doing. And you can lean into your expertise more, have the team handle all the busy work. So I think this is beautiful. Daniel, thank you so much for being with us today. If people want to learn more about you, where should they head?
If you go brimblemedia.com/free gift, we're actually just about to do an ebook on, we're releasing it. By the time this episode comes out, it'll be up. And it's actually on hiring your first virtual assistant, and actually gives you some of that, more of that process and some of the processes that we use in there. Because we want you, regardless if you go through with me or you do it yourself, I want you to be successful in that. So the gift is there. There's also a book on there if you want to get yourself booked on more things, whether you want to do that or yourself or want to contact us to assist you with that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Very welcome.
You've been listening to the Digital Trailblazer podcast. The strategies and earnings mentioned by our guests represent their individual experiences and results. Nothing shared on this show should be considered a guarantee of earnings or success. The views, opinions, and claims expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official views of the Digital Trailblazer podcast or its hosts. This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute professional, financial, legal, or business advice. Please do your own research and consult with qualified professionals before making any business decisions.